the Blazers in particular. And it's a reminder, you and I have had conversations a lot over the years. And I think that the Blazers decision-making process with Neil Olshey is a reminder of some of the things that teams can get wrong. And that's not to say that every move that Olshey has made recently is a bad one, but I think the place to start is something you and I have talked about a fair amount, which is if when a team has to fire and hire a new coach, that is a decision point that is important for the franchise. And I think of this as more like an ownership decision, which is, okay, do we want the person who is currently in charge to do that? Because something happened why you need a new coach. It could be because they retired or something, but typically it's you've made the decision to fire them. And so it's, do you want that person to be hired? So now Olshey hires Chauncey Billups. We still have to see how that's going to work out. But by trusting him to make that decision and then almost immediately firing him, you put Olshey's replacement in a really awkward, challenging spot.
Yeah, and look, let's talk about the circumstances behind Neil Olshey's firing. So the Portland Trailblazers conduct an investigation into the workplace that he has cultivated. Look, like, I'm sure I'm not alone on this. Like, I'm sure you've heard that Neil Olshey can be a difficult person to be around at times. Let's say that, like, that he will shout and yell. Like, I've never, up until recently, let's say, I've never heard anything about, like, disaster level workplace that deserves firing. But then you hear stories, like, for instance, Dan Dickau on his podcast came out and discussed his experiences with Neil Olshey, and it just makes you understand and realize the level of, it just seemed like vindictiveness and like playing games that Olshey would kind of employ in order to get his way. And it just doesn't seem like a particularly positive place to work. And it's hard for me to feel bad for guys who get fired for being an asshole. Like, at the end of the day, that's kind of what it comes down to. Like,
and that ties in with the stuff with the reporting that's been coming out about the Professional Association of General Managers. It's like, well, if you can get fired for cause, I would say that the guideline should be, don't do anything that could lead to that happening. Like, that is the possibility.
Yeah, like, don't be a fucking asshole. Like, it's not hard. I mean, like, just run your organization. Look, like, I understand sometimes you have to have a firm hand. I understand that sometimes people aren't going to agree with your decisions, but just treat people with respect. Like, that's what it comes down to at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And creating a positive work environment is a part of it, and also not facilitating a toxic one. I mean, you could those are positive and negative are different parts of this equation, but I think they're both exceedingly important. But now, whoever ends up getting the reins of this franchise is going to face some real challenges. Not only do you have a head coach, and generally speaking, ownership is not super willing to pay multiple coaches for a long period of time. Hey, Money McNair, you're running into the same problem right now. But also the Blazers are in this exceedingly challenging situation from a personnel perspective. And what I mean by that is the Blazers are far from the worst roster in the league. I mean, they have Damian Lillard, who is having a rough year, but is an incredible talent. They have CJ and Powell. Like, I would say they have not a high playoff caliber roster, but a playoff caliber roster. The challenge is that it is also an expensive roster with some important players hitting free agency soon. So where they go from here, how much latitude the next general manager has, but also over the years, there are a lot of audience of one questions, and typically we refer to that as ownership. It's like, okay, does ownership really want to pay this player? But in many ways, this is also a Damian Lillard audience of one question of, what does he want for the rest of his career? What does he want for the next 2 to 3 years? Because if he wants to stay in Portland, more power to him. But if he wants to be somewhere else, well, then that's something that the new decision maker is going to have to make happen.
Yeah, and I give Damian Lillard credit insofar as he has been pretty public in terms of how he's feeling. Like, this summer, there were whispers, and he seemed like he was, a little bit more open, maybe. And then when the season started, he was like, no, look, there was a time in the summer where I was, thinking about it, but now I'm fully committed, right? So as long as he stays fully committed, you keep Damian Lillard, because the odds of you finding a player like Damian Lillard again are exceedingly low. So look, like you mentioned the idea of like a coach firing and then the general manager hiring a coach. I bring it back to that just insofar as like, I get that the Blazers maybe felt like they didn't need to fire Neil Olshey and that he could be the long-term answer. So you let him make the decision to hire Chauncey Billups. By the way, the hiring of Chauncey Billups was extremely fraught due to allegations in Chauncey Billups' past of I guess that they had to investigate a sexual assault situation. Memory serves at the very least. And then Neil Olshey decided to get very angry and frustrated during the press conference about very rightfully asked questions regarding their process for investigating those claims that happened back when Chauncey Billups, I believe, played for the Boston Celtics. Is that correct?
I believe so. That as far as I recall, that's right.
So all of that happens, and after you decide to let Neil Olshey make the Chauncey Billups hire, you decide then that you're going to investigate him for this toxic workplace. There's no way that this is new information for the Blazers, that Neil Olshey was running a workplace that might be seen by some as toxic, right?
I mean, based on what Dan Dickau was saying, it certainly doesn't appear to be so. It's not like the what he discussed was anything recent, anything that was hiding in plain sight. It was just there.
So it's just crazy to me. The timing of all of this is just insane to me. I don't understand why they didn't fire him at the end of last season. It seemed like the time. To be honest, it seemed like time to make a change. I said it on the podcast at the time that it seemed like time to make a change. Then he goes through the start of the offseason. You remember this as well as I do. They did nothing. Like they signed, I think, Tony Snell, they signed Cody Zeller, they signed Ben McLemore, all to minimum level deals. And you're just sitting there if you're a Blazers fan, and if you're another team in the West, you're like, are they really going to sit here and squander Damian Lillard's prime again? Like you're not going to, it was clear after last season, you need to make a move and you're just not making a move. You're not doing anything. They eventually go out and make the move for Larry Nance, which I liked. Like, I think Larry Nance is a really good player. I think Larry Nance makes a lot of sense for this team. But like Larry Nance ain't fixing the structural issues on this roster at the end of the day. And this is where I think we can bring it to what do we think is happening on the court, because we're now at a point where both Terry Stotts and Chauncey Billups have had significant problems getting this roster to defend at a level that is commensurate with a potential contender. And I understand that you go out and you make the Nance move. Nance is an exceptional defender. I think he's absolutely unbelievable on that end. But I don't think that it solves the core issue of perimeter defense and of having long guys who can rotate and who are switchable and can do different things. Because Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, look, I think Dame has improved a lot defensively over the years. Like, I think he gets a bad rap a little bit for his defensive game because of the way his career started. But he's not switchable necessarily. CJ McCollum, not switchable. The guy they went out and traded 2 first-round picks for, Robert Covington, an exceptional help defender, not a switchable defender. Like, guards can cook him in space, and they've always been able to cook him a little bit in space. Yusuf Nurkic, not a switchable defender. So Norman Powell, also somewhat switchable, but also like 6'3". He has really long arms and is strong, but like switchable 1 through 3, not switchable onto the bigger wings in where you feel confident that he's going to be able to do some damage on them. So this roster has just always been significantly flawed on the defensive end. And I don't know how you fix that without real substantial structural changes, right?
I mean, you don't. So not even counting this year when, as you mentioned, the Blazers are last in defensive rating, filtering out garbage time. I use cleaning the glass for that. In the 4 out of the last 6 years, they've been 20th or worse. And that 1 year when they were 7th, I believe that was the year they made the Western Conference Finals. And then the other year they were 16th. So it's not like they were setting the world aflame with great defense in the 2 anomalous years. And I'm lower on Lillard's defense than it appears that you are. I think that it is there. He has capability to be better, and there are times that he is, but there are also just some games where he is ghastly. And the other real problem for the Blazers, you brought up the lack of scheme versatility switching. They also don't really have that point of attack defender. So most teams now, if you have a star who's point guard sized, you probably don't want that player defending the other team's point guard because it's just too much work. You want to do something else. Well, okay, you're going to do that. Then you're going to give that to Norm Powell. You're going to give that to CJ. You're going to give that to Anthony Simons, who is I would say the worst on defense of those 4. It's a real challenge. And so Olshey hasn't put that part of it in. And I mean, you brought up the scheme versatility. And another part of that I thought has been so telling for the Blazers is they brought in Robert Covington, and Robert Covington is a wonderful team defender. He can move off of his guy, and he can do other things. But you need to have that lead defender so that Covington's not going to do that. And when you throw Covington on the other team's best player, he's not going to do a great job. That's not what he has been at. That's not what he's done best in his career. Yeah. And so, okay, that the whole concept of their defense has never really made sense. And I think you could make an argument that to some extent, the Blazers should be thrilled offensively this year. They're 3rd overall in offense, despite Lillard and CJ McCollum being below their standards. But that gets into what I think is the most important question. I brought up the audience of one, which is Damian Lillard, which is, I would say, their best players can play better than they have so far. And that's a part of why the Blazers are 11-13 and are below water in terms of net rating. But the standard here is extremely important. Does Damian Lillard want to be a 500 team? Does he want to even be a 45-win team? If he's happy with that for the rest of his career, being with the Blazers is a reasonable path for that for the next 3 to 4 years. The length of his current extension, and theoretically this coming offseason, he could extend off that if both sides want it. But if he wants something else, if he wants something more, a team that is relevant in the title picture, and he can want whatever he wants. That's his own prerogative. That's not going to happen in Portland. And I've been saying that since they made the conference finals, because that team was not one of the 2 best teams. I don't think they were one of the 4 best teams in the Western Conference that year. And so if he wants to be in that mix, it's not going to be in Portland.
So I guess that what I'm trying to figure out is, if you're Portland, you're 11-13 right now. There have been games where you've just been flat out embarrassed. Like last night against the Celtics, they got just the breaks absolutely beaten off of them. Peyton Pritchard, a local kid from Portland, was splashing threes at the end of the game. It was hideous. So do you feel part of me wants to look at this. If I'm a Blazers fan right now and I'm trying to come up with the most positive rose-colored view of this, you're 11-13 right now. The West is a mess, which we're going to talk about momentarily here. There are 4 teams above 500. You're, I think, 9th or 10th right now in the conference. Damian Lillard has been terrible so far. By his standard, he has not been good. CJ McCollum hasn't really gotten it going. There have been games where CJ has been great. There have been games where he's not been very good. Do you think that you can just get those guys going and this will turn for you and you can still be a top 4 seed? It's hard for me to feel that optimism given how disastrous the defensive end has looked thus far. But I'm trying to figure out, if you're Portland here, is there a chance that you just ride this out as opposed to making significant structural changes?
Yes, I think there is, and I think it would be a mistake. But as you brought it up, the path forward of kind of maintaining the course is there. I mean, the Blazers have talent there. This is, right now, CJ and Lillard are both around 52-53% true shooting. That's not only well below league average, that's well below their own standards. They're still 3rd in offense. And Powell and Nurkic have been efficient, but also and they've had some steps forward from some of the bench guys. I've liked what Nasir Little has done this year, for example.
Yeah.
So you have enough that if the team stays modestly healthy, and they actually have some capable depth in guys like, I think Snell. Well, he can't really give them less than he has so far, but you can do that, and then Nance. I like some of the way the defense looks when he's on the floor, and Nurkic when he's healthy. I mean, they've been better overall when he's been available.
Yeah, Cody Zeller is not a disaster backup center.
Exactly. So there are ways for this team to tread water and keep and stay afloat like that. If that is satisfactory, then they could do it. And the Western Conference is opening up a little bit for them. I mean, you have, as you mentioned, only 4 teams above 500, and one of those teams, their best player is out for a period of time. We still don't have a firm timetable there. So yeah, if you want to get into possibly the 4 seed and maybe win your first round series, and that, and if that's how they're defining success, great. I mean, that looks like a pretty good year. But it's, first of all, the main reason why that would be happening, why they'd reach that level, would be because some teams are just below their standards. It wouldn't be because, okay, they're a 50 win, they're a surprise 50 win team and they're getting in the mix. Like that's sort of a circumstance. It wouldn't really be that. It would be just, we're slightly better than all these other teams that are really struggling right now, and we expect that they will get better with the passage of time. So
yeah,